They thought she was nobody, just another traveler, quiet, unimportant. So they ripped open her bag in front of the crowd, laughed at the mess, but then the room went silent. Buried in the clothes, folded perfectly, preserved like a relic, was something sacred. A uniform. And not just any uniform. Welcome to Dream Blaze. Before we begin, tell us in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? And if you believe stories like this deserve to be told, hit that subscribe button. The airport terminal buzzed with the usual chaos, flight delays, crying children, and the endless shuffle of travelers dragging suitcases across polished floors. Gate 27 was no different. People sat scattered across blue plastic chairs, most staring at their phones, waiting for boarding announcements that never seemed to come. She sat alone in the corner, away from the crowd, gray hair pulled back in a simple bun, wearing a faded cardigan and comfortable walking shoes. Her suitcase was old but well-maintained, the kind people used before wheels became standard. She didn't check her phone, didn't fidget, just sat with her hands folded, watching the world move around her with quiet patience. Most passengers barely noticed her. To them, she was invisible, just another elderly woman traveling alone, probably visiting grandchildren or heading to some small town nobody cared about. The trouble started when they announced random security checks. Ladies and gentlemen, we're conducting additional screening procedures. If your name is called, please proceed to the secondary inspection area. Her name was among them. She stood slowly, gathered her belongings, and followed the TSA agent to a metal table set up near the gate. Other passengers glanced over with mild curiosity, grateful it wasn't them being inconvenienced. The agent was young, impatient, clearly annoyed at having to work extra. He gestured roughly at her suitcase. "Place it here and step back." She complied without a word. What happened next would haunt everyone who witnessed it. The agent unzipped her bag with unnecessary force and began pulling out her belongings. Not carefully, not respectfully, like he was searching for contraband in a criminal's luggage. Out came modest clothing, simple blouses, practical skirts, undergarments that had seen better days. He tossed them onto the metal table without care, some items falling to the floor. A few passengers started recording on their phones. Someone chuckled. Poor old lady probably packed her entire closet. The woman stood silently, watching strangers rifle through her most personal belongings. Her face showed no anger, no embarrassment, just the tired resignation of someone who had endured far worse than public humiliation. The agent continued his search, growing more frustrated as he found nothing suspicious. Just old clothes, a worn Bible, reading glasses, and medication bottles with her name printed in small letters. That's when his hands found something different. Deep in the bottom of the suitcase, wrapped carefully in tissue paper, was a bundle of fabric. Heavy, precisely folded. The agent grabbed it roughly and began to unfold it, expecting more old clothes. But as the fabric revealed itself, his movement slowed. Dark blue material. Gold buttons, insignia that caught the terminal lights. And then everyone saw it. A military dress uniform, not a costume, not a replica. The real thing, pressed and maintained with the kind of care reserved for sacred objects. The agent's hands froze as he held up the jacket. Across the chest were ribbons and medals, rows of them. Bronze Star, Purple Heart, Silver Star, and at the top, unmistakably, the Congressional Medal of Honor. The terminal fell silent. Passengers stopped recording. The laughter died. Even the constant airport announcements seemed to pause as people processed what they were seeing. This wasn't just any uniform. This was the uniform of a hero. And the quiet woman standing beside the table, the one they had ignored, the one they had dismissed as nobody, had earned every ribbon, every star, every honor pinned to that fabric. The TSA agent's face went white. His hands trembled as he tried to refold the uniform, but he couldn't manage it properly. The creases weren't right. The precision was lost. "Ma'am, I didn't know." She stepped forward gently and took the uniform from his shaking hands. With practiced movements, she refolded it exactly as it had been, every crease perfect, every fold deliberate. "You weren't supposed to know," she said quietly. "That's not why I carry it." An older man in the crowd stepped forward. He was wearing a Vietnam veteran's cap and walked with a slight limp. "Ma'am, if I may ask, what branch?" She looked at him for a long moment, recognizing something in his eyes that others couldn't see. "Army, combat medic, 3 tours." The veteran removed his cap. Others began to follow suit. "Thank you for your service," he said simply. She nodded once, placed the uniform back in her suitcase, and began repacking her belongings. The TSA agent tried to help, but she waved him off gently. She didn't need assistance. She had been taking care of herself for decades. As she worked, people began to approach, not crowding her but forming a respectful distance. Some offered quiet thanks. Others simply stood in silent acknowledgement. A young mother with 2 children whispered to them, "Remember this moment. Remember her." When she finished packing, she closed the suitcase and turned to leave. The crowd parted naturally, creating a path to her gate. As she walked, something extraordinary happened. One by one, people began to stand, not clapping, not cheering, just rising to their feet in quiet respect. By the time she reached her seat, the entire gate area was standing. Businessmen in expensive suits, families with crying babies, college students with backpacks, all united in a moment of recognition that transcended age, race, and background. She sat down and opened a book, seemingly unaffected by the attention. But those who looked closely could see the slight tremor in her hands, the way she blinked a little more frequently than before. An airport employee approached with a first-class boarding pass. "Compliments of the airline," he said softly. She looked up and smiled, the first smile anyone had seen from her all day. "That's very kind, but I'm fine where I am." When boarding began, she was among the last to get in line. Not because she was slow, but because she never pushed ahead of others. It wasn't her way. As she handed her boarding pass to the gate agent, the young woman looked at her with different eyes than she had an hour before. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." The woman paused at the jetway entrance and turned back to look at the terminal one last time. At the metal table where her life had been spread out for strangers to judge, at the faces still watching her with newfound respect. Then she walked onto the plane and disappeared from their lives forever, but her impact remained. The TSA agent went home that night and couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the uniform, the medals, the quiet dignity of a woman who had given everything for her country and asked for nothing in return. He requested transfer to a desk job the following week. The passengers who witnessed the scene couldn't forget it. Some shared the story with family and friends. Others kept it to themselves, carrying it like a private lesson about judgment and respect. The veteran who first approached her tracked down her unit's history online. What he found made him understand why she traveled alone, why she kept the uniform hidden, why she had looked so tired. She had saved 17 soldiers in combat, 17 men who came home to their families because a young medic refused to leave them behind. She had been wounded 3 times, captured once, and decorated for valor under fire. After the war, she became a nurse, spent 40 years caring for others, and never once spoke publicly about her service. Her name wasn't in history books. Her story wasn't taught in schools. But for 30 minutes in an airport terminal, she reminded everyone present what true heroism looks like. It doesn't wear a cape or seek applause. It doesn't demand recognition or special treatment. It simply endures, serves, and carries on, one quiet step at a time. The uniform she carried wasn't just fabric and thread. It was a reminder of who she had been, who she still was, and what she had given for people who would never know her name. Sometimes the greatest heroes are sitting right beside us, invisible in plain sight, carrying their stories in silence until someone finally takes the time to look. So I ask you, have you ever dismissed someone too quickly? Have you overlooked a hero hiding in plain sight? Share their story in the comments. Say their name, because everyone deserves to be seen for who they really are, not just who they appear to be. If this story moved you, subscribe to Dream Blaze. Help us honor those who serve in silence and remind the world that heroism comes in all forms. Until next time, remember, the person sitting next to you might be carrying more than luggage. They might be carrying history. Thank you for watching.